Welcome back to Tales from the Other Side, Stories of Grace. And you guys already know these folks that we have coming back again to talk with us. You guys, Dallin and Karli, y'all are so kind to continue to come and talk with me here. One of the reasons is because the story's so big. You guys leaving the Mormon church. And then the other reason is just because I like talking to you. And it's fun and it's enjoyable. Now, we're going to get you guys from Florida all the way to present day today. But I've got so many people that are from around here that they don't know much about the Mormon church. So you guys are leaving the Mormon church. There's so many like mysteries to us that surround it because it's not anything that we are taught here. But you guys, would you be willing to come back and kind of talk about some of those nuances and some of the beliefs and some of the just the customs? I don't know what you say. Traditions, the religious part of
all
the
the
Mormon
doctrines.
Church. All the doctrines.
That's what I focus on.
Yeah.
I'm so analytical. I got a whole TikTok page where I talk about all the doctrines.
No way. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's so like I would love to say like our listening group is all doctrinal based, but we were really kind of shocked about the undergarments. So that's kind of where our minds went. So like I would love to talk to you guys about, we hear a lot about polygamy, some of the vows you took as part of the Mormon church that are just kind of unusual, and just the journey there. So that would be cool. Y'all
Sure.
down?
Yeah, that'd be
All right.
great.
So listen, this isn't our last conversation with these guys. You're like, how long can this go on? Well, as long as we want. So we'll have you guys come back. But let's get to Tennessee. So from our last conversation, you all were about to leave Florida, right? So what transpired there?
Well, Dallin, I think we mentioned in the last one, he had these big breakthroughs. His relationship with God was really healing. And we didn't know how long we were going to stay in Florida. Like we went there for this healing, and so this pastor could help in, and he really did. And like we didn't know how long we were going to stay in Florida, but once we were there for a few months, we're like, we can't stay forever. Like this is
really
not our place.
Was it just because of like what Florida, like the atmosphere, the climate, just Florida in
super
general?
hot. People just aren't
So hot, yeah.
The church we went to, we loved.
Sure.
The people there, so friendly. Everyone outside of that church just wasn't really our people, you know?
Well, I think that's kind of cool because like everybody here, like if we get like a week off, we're headed to Florida, man. Like
It's a lot more fun to visit.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And we love Florida. We got a lot of folks that have homes down there. But I think that's interesting. Just it doesn't play a huge part in your story, but sort of that you weren't comfortable there. God was trying to get you to where He wanted you to be. Right?
Yeah.
So you went there for some healing. What happened?
When we went there kind of expecting a Tennessee vibe, you can understand why we were like, okay, this isn't it.
Oh, absolutely. There's
Right?
nothing like
There's a lot
this
of good
vibe.
things to say about Florida, but it wasn't anything close to Tennessee or the South.
And especially what we were needing. Like we needed community. Like we just left everything and everyone. Like we needed big friendly community.
Well, I think as a lifelong Tennessean, I could say on behalf of every Tennessean, like I'm speaking for every single one who ever was and ever will be, thank you. We knew we were number one. So you guys decided you're going to leave. So what's up?
Okay. So the miracle was that, like 2 days after Dallin had this huge breakthrough, with the Chosen watching the Peter in the water, that was so healing. Like 2 days later, we have these friends that live up here in Kingston, and they had an RV that they had been renting out to somebody else, and they just called up. They called Dallin, and he's like, "Hey, the renter we had in our RV just told us he's leaving this weekend. It's available if you guys want to rent it.
If you guys really want to get up here, here's your chance."
Yeah,
Yeah.
And we're like, "Oh, perfect timing," and we just picked up and left.
Yeah, I did fly up here and do some job hunting and stuff beforehand.
Sure.
And around the time I realized I wasn't gonna find anything before we moved here for sure. And I was like, well, I can be unemployed in Florida or unemployed in Tennessee.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
So we decided to move up here.
Were you moving from a house? Were y'all living in a home in Florida?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
really,
we had just signed a year lease.
oh wow.
Yeah.
Well, and it was funny because that house had every problem with it, and I think the landlord wasn't even surprised. And he's like he didn't like pursue us, we didn't pursue him. We're just like everyone
gotta
washed
go.
their hands of
Yeah.
it.
They had a pretty handsome deposit that they got to keep, though. So
Yeah.
it worked out.
Well, yeah, that works for them.
Yeah.
But like it makes me kind of anxious. My anxiety kind of kicks up when I'm thinking about you two and 3 kiddos moving, like not just kind of on vacation, but moving into an RV. Like this is our life. Like y'all keep downsizing. I'm like,
And we had decided to get a puppy. So
And
now
a
we had a
puppy?
puppy.
Yeah.
what are you nuts?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
and I mean, we had cut our square footage by, down to like 20% of what we had been living in, and so it was a big adjustment for us.
Yeah.
But again, we couldn't give up on this dream of raising our kids in the right place, raising our kids in a place where they weren't expected to believe the way everyone else did, but it was enough to just be good Christian people, And so I remember when we had finally decided, we had been praying about it, trying to figure out if we should do it. By the time we finally decided, there was only one thing that had me just shaken up about the decision to move. And it was the fact that we had just got to Florida. We were part of a church that we knew was helping us to grow closer to God. I had this amazing relationship with this pastor that I loved. I had a lot of friends there. And we were worried after what happened to us after we left our last church that we had attended, right? Our last church we were a part of. I was really shaken up, and I was scared to tell this pastor and to tell all these people, hey, I know we are like talking like we're going to be here for a few years, but we're moving this weekend. Like we're moving after church on Sunday. And I had to let him know that, and I was so scared.
He was so scared of
how he was going to act.
Yeah.
Let me say this from a pastor's standpoint. I've never been a Mormon on the move, and so I can't speak from that side. But from a pastor standpoint, that is a hard conversation to have because I think most people don't understand, and I don't know how this pastor is about to react. I'm assuming he's going to react favorably because of how well you spoke of him. But for a pastor who meets new people, you have people that get involved, you love them, right? And you invest, you care for them. So it's a hard conversation because you feel like you're losing part of your family. You know what I mean? And we've had people here do the same thing. They've come through. We've invested in. They've invested in us. We become friends. Kids play together. Whatever. And then they're like, "Hey guys, we got to go to wherever." And you're like, "Man." You understand it, but it hurts. You know what I mean, and not in a negative way. So, in a bad like, oh, I'm going to get these guys. It's just like I don't want to lose them. Like we love them.
Well, Dallin was like so scared. Like he's like, I don't even want to go to church. I want to leave early in the morning and just text him, "Hey, sorry, like we moved." And like you are not doing that. Like we are going to church.
I didn't know
Thanks
what
for
to
the trauma
expect.
treatment, but I'm out of here.
Yeah, because he had spent a lot of time with us. You know what I mean?
Yes.
A lot of time with me, one-on-one, working with me, poured a lot into me. But I was amazed. He just responded. He's like, if that's where God wants you to be, I 100% support you. Just make sure you come to church on Sunday.
Yeah.
And so we came to church, and we're sitting in there. And before the service, he just says, before we get going today, I want to inform everybody that very good friends of ours that we hold dear had notified me that they're moving. And he said, can the Lymans please stand up, and he ended up praying over us in front of this whole congregation.
Everyone in the whole congregation raised their hands, and everyone's praying over us. And it was just so healing and loving. Like
that
is
is
such a contrast.
Experience.
So different.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Wow.
And then and it was a powerful experience. We said our goodbyes. It was shocking. I mean, it wasn't even on our radar, I don't think, the week before. Maybe we were barely considering it, but it was just a sudden thing. But then literally, 2 hours after church, we finished loading up my trailer with the last of our belongings and hit the road, drove straight up to
Tennessee, man.
Spring City, Tennessee.
Oh, you came to Spring City?
Yeah, we were in Spring City.
Is that where the RV was?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it was at a campground there, and we moved into it, and I mean, for the first couple of months, it was pretty fun. It was like long-term camping. And we were having fun with it.
What month did you get here?
End of September.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was
about this time.
beautiful.
Yeah, we've been here a year now. And so we are loving the fall, the change of the season, and we loved the fact that it was warm, but we weren't like, melting
Right, yes.
like we had been all summer. And it was great. And when we were living in the RV, we started to just really let go of a lot of the things that we had been holding on to. I was still trying to preserve this status and this image that everything was okay, that I was still successful, all these things. And we started to let a lot of that go and just really start to settle in,
Yeah, I think that would be such a hard thing to do, because we do talk about identity. We spoke about it a little bit, but you're going to bed, you're getting up in the morning, you've moved from Utah, you've moved to Florida, now you're from Florida to Tennessee. You've kind of downsized in your square footage. You got these babies in tow with you, now you're, of all places, Spring City, Tennessee. You know what I mean? Like, most people don't even know it exists. They don't know Kingston exists. Like, if you just asked around, you know what I mean? Like, here people do, but I'm just saying in general. And in a matter of months, you've gone from a successful family to not having anything. I would imagine like deep issues of going to bed at night, waking up in the morning without that assurance of being successful, right?
Yeah.
And what that does to a man and a woman, what that does to a marriage, what that does to a family, what that does to, like, if I woke up 2 weeks from now in a campground going, I don't know what's next, I would be freaking out, right? I would be a basket case. I might be good, if you just talk to me, like, fake it till I make it kind of deal. But I think on the back end of that would be some really hard moments.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was hard. And when we had first moved here, I had tried to start my business back up that I was doing before. I started my business back up doing interior remodels and stuff. And what was amazing is right when we moved up here, within a day of being here, I had posted, on Facebook, like a little ad, and I had gotten my first project that was a multi-month project.
Wow.
And so when we first moved here, we were doing pretty good. Things were looking up. We were paying our bills. Everything was feeling good. And then that project weaned, and I wasn't really sure what to do. And I wasn't sure how to advertise here, and like what would appeal to people and everything. Because I didn't really understand the culture and everything yet. And so
Do you now?
I'm starting to.
It takes a while, man. Yeah. It's completely different, right?
Yeah.
It's a completely different culture.
And in all good ways, you know? But yeah, so that was a really big thing for us, is, having my business do really well in the beginning and then start to wean. Around that same time, we had moved from the RV that we were in to a house that they had at this campground. They had a house that they normally rented out for nightly rentals, but they let us rent it we were supposed to be in it through March.
Okay.
Yeah, they weren't doing the nightly rentals for the winter, so they just let us rent it the whole winter.
For a really fair rate.
We thought we could have it through the end of March, and that's like, just if anyone wonders, our friends, we're still great friends. They didn't kick us out, but their lease was ending, and they got land, and they were going to build on the land. So they were moving back into their trailer to build on their land.
They needed their RV back.
Yep. So the campground
had more space.
Yeah, we had more space in the house, and everything just worked out.
Yeah.
So now you're in the house till March, or supposed to be.
We're supposed to be till March, and we're maintaining. We're surviving. We're getting by. At this time, I was having a really hard time making ends meet. And at this point in the journey, my anxiety is peaking. It's at an all-time high, and it's becoming so out of control that I would literally multiple times a day have full-fledged panic attacks where I would have to focus on controlling my heart rate. I felt like I needed a paper bag. I was literally feeling actual pressure in my head. Like I was actually feeling like I was going to have an aneurysm, like I was just going to blow a blood vessel any minute.
Yeah.
And I felt that way for almost a year.
No way.
But I would literally just be sitting, just driving the truck. Everything's good. I'm listening to my music. I'm feeling great. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere would come this panic attack. A lot of times nothing would trigger it. If something triggered it, it was really bad. But I would have full-blown panic attacks with absolutely no warning, no rhyme or reason, no tangible reason of why I'm feeling anxious. Yeah. Everything's going great. It's a perfect day. And all of a sudden, I'm just completely like mentally melting down. And one story, just to kind of illustrate how bad it got, I'm embarrassed to tell this story, but I remember this one day, I was having a panic attack, and my kids were just being kids. I mean, they were 2, 4, and 5. They're just being kids, but I just couldn't handle it. And I just started raising my voice. I ended up making my oldest son cry because I was being so hard on him. And he's like, Dad, like, why are you yelling at me? And I was like, buddy, I just don't know how to handle you guys. You're out of control. And he just started crying, and he's like, Dad, you used to know how to handle us. Oh, dang. And it was then that I realized, I'm like, oh my gosh, this isn't about them. Yeah. My anxiety isn't about them. They're just being kids. What's going on is some external horrible nightmare that I'm allowing to affect my family. I'm allowing to hurt my kids. And that was a huge breaking point for me. It was really kind of the beginning of feeling hopeless, because at this point, I'm having unbelievable, uncontrollable suicidal thoughts. I'm starting to be convinced that I would be a coward to stay around. I had a good life insurance policy. I felt like my family was better off without me. I was better off without me. Like, the only way to solve our problem at this point was to cash in my life insurance policy almost. And it was a really ugly time. I started to lose a lot of hope, because like, we're living in this house, which is great, but we know we have a timestamp on it. My credit's starting to go down. So our hope of being able to get into another place is dwindling very quickly. Not to mention, I don't have much of an income. I didn't really have a real job opportunity. I'm doing every little odds and ends job I can find just to pay the bills. We're still making most of our rent payments. We are blessed in this situation to be able to be making some of our rent payments on credit cards. But that was a double-edged sword. It was a blessing and a curse. And our problems are mounting. Everything's starting to get worse. My anxiety is becoming completely uncontrollable. And it was at this point that we really started to feel completely hopeless.
So, Karli, you're riding shotgun in this moment. You're seeing this. How are you? Like, what's going on? I'm going to come back to him in just a second, because that's a lot. Like, that's heavy. And I think people have felt similar from different situations. I think panic attacks are hard to explain. I think they are overwhelming. I think they will cause you to question everything, because you're finally you're at a peak lost control. You can't even control your body.
You go straight into fight or flight out of nowhere.
I mean, you can't control one thing. And you're over here. You're in the same situation, living in the same house, raising the same babies. What's going on with Karli?
It was really hard. It got a little scary just because, like, I didn't know how to help him most of the time. Yeah. Trying to help calm him down at the same time, trying to wrangle the kids. Like, oh, yeah.
She was carrying a lot of the weight.
Well, you can't get a break, right? So what are you going to do? Like, you can't get away from it. Like, sometimes if families are going through things like this, somebody like me might say, hey, you all need to get away for a minute. Just go forget about everything. And then come back. It's like an elephant. We'll eat it one bite at a time, but get away from it. You have nowhere to go.
No, there's nowhere to find peace.
You're on permanent vacation, right? I mean, nothing has taken you. It's not like you can just go to the campground owners and go, hey, could you watch my kids for the weekend? Yeah, you're not going to be able to do that. So you're literally stuck in this thing, and you're melting down outwardly. Mm-hmm. It's affecting others. Are you kind of melting down inwardly?
Yeah, I started to get quite a bit of anxiety too. Yeah. Never knowing when he was gonna have a panic attack. Yeah. And how to handle it. Yeah, it was pretty rough.
Yeah, I would imagine these days are some of the darkest.
Oh,
yeah. Fair?
Yeah, some of the darkest days of our story, the darkest days were during this time period in this, in this campground house and everything that we were going through. It was starting to mount. The credit cards were starting to run dry. All of our hopes, we, for a moment when we first went to Tennessee, thought we finally figured it out. We finally made it.
Yep.
We just had to figure out a house and we were going to be good. And it so quickly turned back to, no, you're actually worse off than you were. And
what's sad?
No physical reason to believe that we are going to be okay.
If we just pause your story right here, right? And because we're fast moving to present day. A lot of things are about to transpire within the next year to get us to September of this year. But if we just pause for just a moment, think about, because I'm sure that not leaving a Mormon church, but just in general, people that go through things like this, think about this headline. If we're all here reading Roane County news, young couple, father takes his own life. That's what you had said. You were having suicidal thoughts, right? No one here would have been impacted at all by your all's living here or not living here. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the thing that when we're in these moments that we can't see is the other side of that. Like now we are all invested. Like we are in. You guys know there's been people from the church that have reached out and said, "Hey, I want to help them with this, this, and this. I want to be a part of this." You probably don't even know their faces, but they know yours. But in that moment, no one knew your face. No one knew your story. And you were literally alone. And I think sometimes, if I can turn this spiritual for just a second, I think that's where the enemy likes to get us, is alone, isolated, stuck in a campground of our choosing, wherever that might be, and make you feel like you'll never get out of this. Like, dude, you have messed up so bad. Your family, your kids would be better off without you or without you or whatever. The world would, whatever. And we are so vulnerable in those moments that a lot of times we're like, I think you're right. I think, because I'm sitting here on this side going, no, dude, no, don't even think like that. These 3 babies, no, come on. Like, we'll live to fight another day, But in that moment, and there's people that are going to be listening, they've had those thoughts too. It's dark. Like, how did you push back against that?
Well, I guess before I get into that,
okay.
One thing to know is that number one, I felt hopeless. I felt like there's nothing at this point that could save us.
Yeah, it's over.
Like there was only one way for my family to be okay. Mm-hmm. And there was no other way. Like physically, it was impossible to come out of this, But I'll tell you what really helped me hold on, and I'm not being cliche. No. It was the Grove.
Oh, wow.
I mean, entirely. Because we had found the Grove towards the end of 2023. It was
like October, I think.
Maybe, I don't know. But we had found the Grove, and if I'm being honest, Pastor Philip, your services every single Sunday were exactly what I needed to get to the next Sunday.
Now, I want to say this because we hadn't talked about that, and I wasn't expecting that, so that was not a setup at all. Yeah. Tell me more. That was not a setup at all. Like, and I'm very thankful that you say that, because we hope, in what we're doing, that it reaches and touches people. Because we're normal people too. We got things going on, and you kind of wonder if you're just shouting in a can sometime, and if it even makes an impact. When I'm preparing messages, or the JT's preparing worship, or our team's getting ready for Sunday, I promise you, we've never been sitting around going, you know what? I think there's a family in Spring City that's losing their minds. Let's really dig in this week. They may show up. Like, we don't, you know what I'm saying? And I think sometimes we're not aware spiritually of what God's doing and how He's beginning to connect the dots for a lot of different people. So like from my end, I'm thinking, okay, like when you drop that on me, like I'm sitting here going, okay, I'm at the end of this story. Not at the end, but at the end of the dark spaces of this story, where you're coming in. We're going to meet here in this space. I didn't know that when you were going to be leaving Utah. You didn't know that. We weren't, the brother and sister that we were going to be, that you maybe never wanted, but here we are. Nobody knew that. And I think that's why it's so important for anybody that's listening to this. It's so important to really continue what you're doing, continue to be obedient to Jesus Christ, continue to walk and move forward, because you have no idea what today's going to bring or tomorrow's going to bring. Just so happens a year ago, it was the Lymans in the Grove, and here it is. So you're hopeless. You start hearing messages, whatever those messages, I couldn't even tell you what they are. Whatever those messages were speaking to your hearts, and it started to, light began to pour in, I guess.
Well, there were a couple of Sundays when I literally looked at her. I'm like, you didn't call him. Like,
he
seriously?
literally thought, he's like,
I really
did
thought
you
she's
tell
like conspiring
him?
to like give you, like tell you what I had been through that week so you could address it. I'm like, there's no way he's just talking to me. This is crazy. But it felt like that every Sunday.
Yeah. What's his name, Dallin? Okay, what did he do? Okay, I've got the perfect sermon.
But it was the perfect thing, and that was something that helped me to hold on, because remember, at this time, we were brought up believing God to be a certain way that I'm now learning isn't reality. Like, I started to learn about grace. I didn't really know what grace was. I was raised believing that it's only through grace that we're saved after all we can do. That's a literal scripture in the Book of Mormon that they use to explain,
So let me get that. So like after everything that you can do that's up to you, then grace takes over.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but Jesus can and will only save you if you check all these boxes, make all of these covenants, do all of these things, where your garments, all of these things are essential parts of being saved. And if you fall short, then it's all bets are off. You'll still get, you're not going to go necessarily to hell, like I mentioned before.
There's not a hell, really.
But you're not going to be with God, and you're not going to be with Jesus. And
can I just say this without picking on anybody? I'm not picking on anybody. So if Mormons are listening, I'm certainly not picking on you. That's whatever. What a awful way to think. Terrible. Like that makes me want to vapor lock. Like, I'm like, dude,
that's how the Pharisees believed.
Well, yes, but I'm just thinking, like, in a human standpoint, I've never been good at punch list. Like, if I listen to that, like, I am done. Like, I'm going to get to heaven and be like, what? I thought I missed one? Holy cow. You know what I'm saying? Like there's so much. Like, that doesn't sound like grace. That doesn't sound like mercy. That doesn't sound like anything out of love. That sounds like conditional love. That sounds like you do X, Y, and Z, and I will absolutely love you this way. You miss any of those steps,
conditional
you
love.
do, yes, then I'm sorry, but you can't go any further. And for me, when I think about it, I'm like, how hopeless that must be. Like, if I were talking to anybody that's on the other side of that wall, I'd be like, come on, dude. Like, come on. There's no other place in your life that shows you that type of conditional love. If that was your marriage, we would say you need marriage counseling, right? If that were your kids, I'd say grow up and be a parent. If you were a kid, I'd say love your mom and dad and honor them. Well, they didn't do this, right? I would not sign off on any of that, but we've managed to talk millions of people to sign off on it and say, that's the way God loves. Holy
It's
smokes.
like you got to do all the things to qualify for grace.
Oh, jeez.
And there's even been a quote kind of recently of the President Nelson. He literally said, like,
The prophet of the church.
He literally had a quote saying, a lot of people say God's love is unconditional, but I don't think we could qualify like that. I don't think we should define it like that.
What a sad take.
Yeah.
I don't know this guy, but what a sad take. Just to me, I can see how dark that would get. And let me just kind of connect these dots. I think in God's infinite wisdom, and He knows, I preach a certain way, like I teach a certain way, and it comes from a way, and every pastor does. I'm not knocking anybody or saying mine's better, because I'm like, if you're listening to me, I'm low barrel. Like, I'm down at the bottom. There's a lot of guys that can really just, teach and preach. But I'm huge on grace, and I'm huge on brokenness, and I'm huge on mercy, and I'm huge on you can't do it, but He can.
Yes,
and
that's what I needed.
And it comes from me realizing it too, like going through a life of, I wasn't raised Mormon. I was raised traditional, Christian Baptist, a traditional boy where, you do certain things. It wasn't to earn God's love necessarily, but to prove that you loved Him, right?
Yeah.
And so you do all these things. Well, the bar set so high that you can't be those things, and you're going to fail. And when you fail, here's what happens in this culture is everybody looks at you different, right? It didn't matter that they failed and they've got stuff in their closet. It doesn't matter. But once they see your dirty laundry, they look at you different. And so when they look at you different, you assume God looks at you different too. And he does with compassion, you know? And so once I finally got that as an adult and it settled on me, Philip's never good enough, but Jesus Christ is. It changed the way I communicate.
Yeah.
And so
the way you live.
Yes, and the way I live. And so now
you're
all
acting
of a sudden,
out of gratitude.
Dude. Yeah.
Not obligation.
And me, now you're going to get me excited. We're never going to get you to Tennessee to present day. But here's the deal, is people that are listening to this, yes, I received that. But now I don't want to just be over here as a guy going, yeah, I received that. I want to bring as many people as I can into that same understanding. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes what you pick up on when I'm preaching is not that I know your story or his story or her story or their story. I know my story, and I know there's more like me, and you need this. You know what I mean? And so that's what's kind of spilling over into your life. It was a match made in heaven, it sounds like, for both of us.
Yeah.
Because I can promise you that ship sails both ways, because me meeting you guys was like, now, yeah, you're my kind of people. You know what I mean? And I'm learning. So you hear this, you're coming to the Grove, you're hanging in there. Take me to the next step.
So we need to mention, right around this time, we'd been thinking this for almost 2 years. We had physically stopped going to the Mormon church, but our names were all still on their official records.
Okay.
And most people probably won't know this, but it is not easy to remove your name from the records of the church.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, well, we wouldn't know that. Like here, like no. let me just give it kind of so that, because I don't know what you're about to tell me, but I'm assuming this is going to be awesome, like terribly awesome, like more terrible than awesome. And so it's going to be a journey. Let me tell you what happens here. If you're going here and you decide to go somewhere else, and let's say you're a church member, you can actually have that church send us a letter that says, hey, they joined our church. And then what we would do is like send them a letter that says, oh, these were great people here. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. They put your name over there and we just mark you off over here. Like, it's easy as that, like transferring schools. It's like, changing jobs. But no. I don't think that's what's about to happen to y'all.
No, so
with the Mormon church, like if your names are still on the records, all of your temple covenants you made, everything is still applied. You're still, held accountable by Mormon God to all of these things.
Temple covenants. Just give me the small version of this.
That's going to definitely be mostly a next time episode.
But we make all these promises and learn all these secrets to get into heaven. And we covenant with each other, like when you get married in the temple.
Wait a minute. There's secrets to get into heaven?
We got to save it for next time. It'll take forever. Yes.
Yeah.
But so,
big secrets.
I want to know what the secrets are.
It's fear tactics, because they said, like, only their baptism is valid. And there's a sealing to get into heaven. You have to be sealed to your spouse to see your family in heaven, and to be sealed to Jesus to be in the highest level of heaven.
Oh, my word.
They have levels of heaven.
It's scare tactics. Like if you leave the church, if you go and request your name off the church, they like have this disclaimer, like if you remove your name from the records of the church, we will take away basically all the covenants that you have made. All of your essential saving ordinances will be like null and void. And I'm just like, I read that, like laughed. I'm like, you think you have that power?
I'm like, isn't that the point?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, wait a minute, y'all gonna take all that back? Because okay, you can have it. You know what
Not
I mean?
only that, but the church is really good at searching for you. Like, if you move, it doesn't matter where you go to. Every single address in the continental U.S. and most countries in the world have an they call it a ward, which would be like a congregation in Christian terms.
We would call it a congregation or association.
Yeah, that you're supposed
like
to go
schools.
to.
It's zoned, so like you have to go to a specific place.
And they'll find you. And
the
they'll move your records to where you're going, and they'll start sending missionaries to your door every 2 weeks.
Yeah, the missionaries don't just knock on random people's doors. Like they'll get a whole list of people who stopped coming to church and go try to bring them back.
So I'm not making fun. Listen, if you're a Mormon faith, you're going to think I'm making fun right now, but I'm not. But in my mind, when you say that, I'm tracking. I've got ADD, ADHD, FBI, CIA. I got it all. But here's the deal. When I hear that and we're going wards, in my mind, I'm doing plots. and I'm hearing that knock, because here, like if a Mormon knocks on the door, a lot of times we lock the door, shut the blinds, and just go sit until y'all drive off or bicycle off or walk off or whatever. But like I'm thinking if it's a Mormon, like, and they knocked on your door, like in my mind, here's what I heard. I heard dun dun dun, like it's on today, like they found us. You know what I mean? Like that makes my stomach hurt. That makes my stomach hurt.
Yeah, and so I guess you can continue.
Okay,
did they find you?
No, so they didn't come find us. We wanted to take our names off so we wouldn't be on their records. And for several years, like for as long as it's been, the protocol was you had to actually write a letter to like the first presidency, like literally the prophet. You had to write a letter saying your intentions and you request.
You want to give up on salvation.
Yeah, request your name take off.
Is that how you say that?
No, not literally.
No,
but.
And they would have to approve it, and then it's like your local leaders, like I think, help take your records off. And you would have to have an attorney help you and have it notarized.
No way.
It takes months to do.
But more recently, I don't know when this started. Within the last few years, there's an attorney office that set up this free website where you can it's called quitmormon.org, and you can like have them, it's like
represent
their whole
legally.
Team, their whole attorney team, like they'll do it all for you. They just print out like your request form. You have to take it somewhere to get notarized, and then you scan it in, and they do the rest for you.
It's easier to get out of a timeshare than to get out of the Mormon church.
Yeah. So that's what we did. We used quitmormon.com, but we had to take these things. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So we had to take these documents to a notary. We went to our bank here in Kingston, and we asked
Were they like shocked too? Were they
this
like,
lady's notarizing this. She's like, this is the craziest thing I've ever notarized.
No kidding.
And we're just like laughing. We're like, I know this is insane. But yeah, like we gotta.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate for just a minute. I'm assuming on their end, they may be saying, we've got to make this official because we're doing away with their salvation. So like if this ever comes up, we want to make sure,
Show God the attorney documents.
Hey, they want it out.
Yeah.
They don't know.
It was notarized.
Yeah, it was notarized. There was some lady in Kingston that signed off on this, right?
Yeah.
This, honestly, again, I want to be sensitive, but this blows my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. But that was a big step because remember this whole time, Dallin's like thinking God hated him, wondering if he was punishing him because he left the church, even though he thought he should, and all this stuff. Like he was worried, like taking that huge step, like what that would mean, like
that hell was going to come
actually taking our names off.
Yeah.
But it was like one of those big, just I guess another breakthrough and just like a huge step.
It was relieving. It relieved so much pressure, and it made me feel like I can officially say that I'm not a Mormon anymore. Like I can officially put that whole part of my identity behind me and seek a new identity in Christianity.
And this is the crazy thing. We had to do it not only for us, but for our 3 kids.
No.
They weren't even baptized yet, but as infants, we have them like blessed, kind of like christening, I guess you'd say, but like as an infant. And so they had record numbers. All of their names were on official records, and we had to have all of them removed too.
Yeah.
I'm so, I did not know this part of your story, and I'm just over here kind of like, what in the world? Like, wow. Like, whew. Around here, if you want to leave the church, you can find people to help you pack your car. You know what I mean? Like, like they're like, all right, dude, hate to see you go. Here you go. You know what I mean? But there, it's
the church will help you pack your car.
They got to go. I've had that treatment. But you're talking about like, I mean, oh my word, like, I don't know, man. I'm just processing in real time. I just don't. It's just hard to believe that there's people that go, yeah, I want to be in that. It's just hard for me to believe that. Like, and then you began this whole thing 3 times ago about freedom. Yeah. They're all about freedom.
Yeah.
Until they put the golden handcuffs on you. Mm-hmm. And then they dangle heaven over you or a level of it, Yeah. I mean, it sounds like everything that we're working towards here is works-based salvation. And then you cannot get out of it. Mm-hmm. You're in, dude. This is like, I mean, you're in,
Yeah.
So no wonder people wouldn't leave. Like, I would be like, yeah, I would leave, but I got to go get an attorney. I got to go get this. I'll just not leave.
And there is a process without an attorney, but it takes months and can oftentimes just be swept under the rug. If you want it done, you need an attorney of some kind.
I'm just processing, and this has just got me just wow.
Yeah.
I would feel hopeless. If I'm you guys, I would feel hopeless.
Yeah.
Right? I definitely would feel like I don't even like to go get my tags renewed at the courthouse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I got to go do that. So to think I'm doing this just so I can move forward with my life, and now my kids are involved in it and all this, like I can see those panic attacks now. You know, it makes me want to have one right now.
Mm-hmm. And that plays, I think that's the perfect segue into like the next thing, like the most hopeless we ever felt.
Yeah. So, so in February, it was her birthday.
What's your birthday?
February 14th. It was my birthday, Valentine's Day.
Yeah. Dude, no way. You know what mine is?
We were meeting with you that day, actually.
And we met with you.
Yes.
And,
Valentine's Day, and then mine's the next day.
Oh, really?
That's cool.
Oh, nice.
15th,
Very nice.
Yeah, thank you.
So yeah, it was on her birthday. Right before we came to meet with you, we were let know we were supposed to be in this house through the end of March, and we were informed that we had to be out by end of the month. Just all at once. The landlord just texted us saying, "Hey, we need to do some renovations and stuff on the house before we start renting it out. We need the month of March, and so you guys need to be out by end of February."
Yeah,
I think he even said sooner, and you pressed him.
It was originally sooner, and I was like, dude,
yeah,
you can't give me a week notice.
Yeah, I got 3 kids.
Like, if you had any idea what I'm in the middle of right now, and he was gracious enough to extend it to the end of February. But this is on her birthday, right?
Happy birthday.
Yep.
It just keeps coming, doesn't it?
I was like literally on my way out the door. Like, he surprised me with a massage that morning. I was out my door. I was like, yeah, of course.
And we got to be out. Happy birthday, honey.
Yeah. So it was pretty fantastic. It was a great feeling to all of a sudden be facing homelessness. But what's interesting is that same day, I think later in the day, one of my old buddies that I used to do door-to-door sales with 8 years ago called me out of the blue, and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing these days?" You know, and he ended up offering me this opportunity to go and sell fiber optic internet door-to-door. And I was like, "Dude, like, come on, I'm not a kid anymore."
Yeah,
you know, like it just, I was so far removed from door-to-door sales in my mind. I had done it and I had done well at it. But I was like, I can't go back to knocking doors, you know, like I don't want to do that. But at the same time, he's like, look, there's good money potential in this, and I think you should try it. And so I ended up starting that job kind of around the same time.
So you started, because when we were talking, you were doing door to door.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
He was doing it with a different company that wasn't really working out.
Mm-hmm. I was doing a little bit locally.
Yeah, and then his friend called him like same day, everything. It was like a huge low and a huge high. It's a huge blessing, but when we were just like getting kicked out, like we still had no money saved up for a deposit. We had been looking like continuously on Zillow and Facebook like for rentals, and we'd even like talked to a few, but even like in the middle of nowhere, a really cheap old house, like the landlords were like, I don't know about your credit, you know, like we were not having good luck.
And you're like, I don't know about your house, but I'm willing to take a risk.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were getting rejected by houses that like we wouldn't have
You
wanted
wouldn't have
to
even
live
looked
in.
at.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But we were getting so desperate, and even they're turning us down. You know, the market was too tight. And so during this period of time, we had a big decision to make. And I was kind of in the mindset of, okay, I only see 2 options. We have one more chance to make Tennessee work. I've got just enough money on a credit card to put to rent an Airbnb for 1 month, or I have just enough room on a credit card to pay the gas and maybe a U-Haul trailer to get all of our stuff back to Utah. We can move in with move into my grandma's house with my mom,
I was hopeless. Like by the time we got to the end of February, the day before we're moving out, I just completely broke down. I lost it. I don't even know if he'd booked the Airbnb yet, but I was like, we're done. Like, we failed. We're going to go back to Utah and live with your grandma. Like, I was done, hopeless, over.
Yeah. And, but then, I remember that night, she's breaking down and I'm just like, literally, God, where are you? Like, just so overwhelmed. Like, where are you? Like, I gave up everything to follow you. I'm back to being Peter on the water in the Chosen, like, where are you? I gave up everything to follow you. And like, this is it. This is how it ends. Like, we sold everything. We gave up everything to leave Utah, did it again to leave Florida. And this is how it ends. I just couldn't believe it. And it was so overwhelming. She's fallen apart. The person who's been a solid rock through this whole process, who helped keep our family together, is now weaning in her faith.
Yeah.
And it was in that moment that I was like, man, we are really done for, And I just remember telling her, I'm like, where's God? And I started to think, like, is he just like out on leave? Did he take like the year off? Has he like, are my prayers going to voicemail? Like, what's going on? Because the God that I hope is real, the God that I want to believe in, the God that I've always understood him to be, wouldn't just let us fail like this. He wouldn't abandon us. He's faithful. Why is it all ending? And then all of a sudden I recalled this memory of a time in our past when we also felt hopeless. We were in a really competitive market. I didn't have a proof of income in this market. We wanted to move from northern Utah down to St. George, and we were blessed with a miracle house situation as well. And I nudged her. I was like, hey, Karli, do you remember like getting our St. George house and how big of a miracle that was, and like how we don't even understand why they accepted us, but it worked. I was like, we're a lot more desperate and a lot more of an ugly situation now than we were then, but he's done this before. And I started to think about all of the miracles that he's done in my life. And I started to think, what mindset was I in? What was different about me when I was being blessed beyond measure?
Oh, wow.
And in that moment, I recalled service that you had preached, I believe the Sunday or maybe 2 Sundays before, on James chapter 1, and about and you quoted a scripture that as a Mormon missionary I quoted with every single investigator I ever taught. We quoted James 1:5 because that's the scripture that Joseph Smith read, that led to him praying and asking God which church was true, and God supposedly appeared to him and told him that none of the churches were true and that he needed to restore God's church and all these things, right?
Which we're going to get into next.
Which we'll get into.
Yes.
But what I had never, ever noticed before was the verses that follow that. Yeah. And that's what you emphasized.
Right.
And I remembered this. And so I want to read this because this scripture is the most powerful scripture. One of my favorite scriptures in the Bible now.
Yeah.
Because,
and James, here's the interesting thing before you read that. James, half-brother of Jesus, didn't believe in him while he was here.
Interesting.
Yeah, he didn't believe in Jesus while he was here. He was living life with him. And then Jesus is crucified, put in the tomb, resurrected 3 days later. And one of the first people he shows himself to after the resurrection is James. Like, hey, brother. like if I'm James, I'd be like, what? Yeah. But he does that. And so from that point forward, James is sold out, becomes a pillar of the church, carries the gospel, teaches it. And that's why when he writes about being double-minded, what you're about to say, it's so imperative because he's lived that, right? Yeah. He went forward like you guys are, and this is, you didn't ask for this, but I love James. In fact, that's my first name. James, because they called him Camel Knees after the fact. That's what his name was because he spent so much time in prayer. So he wouldn't talk to Jesus much when he was here. He made fun of him. But then after he's resurrected and ascended into heaven, he spent all of his time on his face talking to him. He was sold out.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, it is cool, yeah.
I love to know that now.
Yeah. I'll tell you more next time.
Yeah, so in this scripture, this is the one that I read 1,000 times as a missionary. It says, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. Very familiar scripture, right? But then in verse 6 it says, but let him ask in faith with no doubting, for he who doubts is like a wave of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. For let not that man suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. He's a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. And it was in that moment that I realized I've been faithfully following God. Like, I've been willing to do the crazy things.
Yeah.
But I've always had a backup plan. I always had this way. I was going to save myself if God didn't. Right? Mm-hmm. I had this backup plan of how I was going to say, you know what I mean?
A lot of this time we're like, okay, well, it'd be cool if God did this for us.
I know he could,
but if he doesn't, yeah.
Right? There's that asterisk on everything.
Well, and I think that even in my journey, people had always taught you, like, you need to have a fallback plan. Like, if this doesn't work, what are you going to do? Like, you know, and we're trained kind of that way. So even if you go into ministry, let's say the church doesn't work, what are you going to do? Like, where are you going to go to work? Because the scariest place to be is to be out on that limb and go, I've got it all. I'm all on black. You know what I mean? And if Jesus doesn't show up, we fail. You know, and when you're like that, you are single-minded. Mm-hmm. But if you do have another plan, which is what you're all talking about, you do get double-minded because you're like, well, if this doesn't work, we'll do this, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I believe in you, God, but
you know, if you don't come through, you're probably busy. And if you're busy
just in case you're not real, just in case it's not your will to, you know, help us out, whatever.
And a lot of that comes from, well, in case I'm not worthy enough to receive this blessing.
Worthiness was
unless I'm not good enough to get this from you.
You were conditioned that way, right? In this conditional love, maybe he goes, no, you missed a mark on the punch list today.
Well, a big part of trying to find God and find this new relationship with God is trying to figure out how to be worthy now. If this list of things that I was told I had to do to be worthy
that's good. That'll preach.
Is broken up and invalid, then what is the real list of worthiness? Like, what is God's worthiness interview? You know,
did you say worthiness interview?
Yeah, because in the church, to be able to go into a temple, which we'll get into more next time, you have to do a worthiness interview by your bishop or what would be pastor in you know, the Mormon church.
What a lot of pressure on that guy.
Oh yeah,
it starts when you're like 11 years old.
Yeah,
I wouldn't want to be that guy.
Yeah,
like, man, you're just not ready. You know, or yes, you are. And
it's pretty crazy. But I was trying to imagine, like, what is the worthiness qualifications now? You know, and I didn't realize, you know, until I learned what grace really was. I didn't realize that that's not really a thing with Jesus. You know, it's not about worthiness. It's about
Jesus is the worthiness.
Exactly.
Right? It's not about you, it's about what he did.
Yeah.
And so when you come to know him and through salvation, you know, he seals you to the day of redemption. So he's on you. When God looks at you to look for worthiness, if he just looks at any of us, he goes, they're not worthy. You know, I'm imperfect. But because I know Jesus Christ is my Savior, when he looks at me, he sees his son and he goes, come on in. And that's the beautiful part. Like, that's nothing I can do. I can't lose it. I can't earn it. It's just all that Jesus did. You didn't know all that at that point because it was Jesus plus stuff, right? Yeah. It was Jesus plus this X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. Jesus did his work, but what did Dallin do? What did Karli do? You know, you need to do a little bit more. You know, Jesus is just over here waiting, going, hey, dude, I did everything I could. What are you doing?
You got to make up your portion of your salvation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jeez. And so in that moment, I nudged Karli and I kind of shook her and I was like, hey, I really think he's got something planned. Like, I just had this whole realization and I'm recalling all of these miracles he's done for us in the past. And I think I figured out the missing link. I'm not having true faith. I'm like having faith with a backdoor option, you know? And I was like, he's going to deliver. It's going to be okay. Like, we switched places that night. This is the night before we're supposed to move, right? We're only about half packed. You know, it's not really setting in that this is really happening. We have, we put Airbnb in Sevierville on our last little bit of money we had on our last credit card.
That had to be expensive too.
It was very expensive. Yep. Surprisingly, it was the cheapest option, you know, that had enough rooms to be comfortable and all that, which was crazy. It was just the off season or something. But I was like, we've got 1 month to make this work, and I'm going all in on believing that God's going to save us. I'm going all in on it because we are completely done for without him. He's our only hope. And I went to bed finally at peace that night.
Wow.
The next morning, I had this thought, this impression to get on Facebook Marketplace. I was supposed to be packing. We were supposed to be getting out of there. But I have this thought to get on Facebook Marketplace again. And the first house that pops up is a house I've seen a dozen times. We've been looking for homes for months, and we've seen this for over a month. every single time we looked. And it's a brand new house in West Knoxville in a cul-de-sac, you know, and all these things. And we're like, why is that still on? That's got to be a scam, you know, because there's no way in this market that a house that nice and ideal would not be taken. Yeah.
And it was a fair price.
It was a very fair price. And it allowed dogs. We had a dog. We didn't want to let the dog go.
The RV dog.
The RV dog.
Boy or girl?
A boy.
Boy.
What's his name?
Oh, gosh.
Don't ask.
You don't want to ask that.
I don't?
His name's Bama, and when you say roll tide, he rolls over.
Yeah, and instead of roll over, it's roll tide. I'm sorry, we've never come out of the closet on that one with you. But
just when I think you're making progress, you set me back 10 years. Oh, my gosh.
but
clearly, you've stepped off meeting all the worthy conditions to get into heaven if you've got a dog named Bama that rolls over at roll tide.
You know, he may have been the Jonah on the ship this whole time, for all that I know, you know. But anyways, we are quickly becoming Duel fans, at least. I don't know if that's any better, but
we'll talk off air about that.
Anyways, so
that was all his idea.
I love it.
I love that you had to ask that.
Thank you. Too. I did. Now I know more. Yeah.
But anyways, and so I end up calling on this house, and the first thing I asked the landlord is like, "Hey, is it still available?" And then the second question was, "Why? You know, how is this not rented yet? What's going on? Tell me about it." He's like, "Well, we've had about 17 qualified applications come through, but this is mine and my wife's first investment property. It's our first, you know, we're just barely venturing into being landlords, and we just haven't felt like we found the right family yet. You know, we don't just want to rent our house to anybody. We haven't found the right family yet." And instantly, I'm starting to hear, you know, those setups for these miracles that I'm familiar with, that God's done before. And I'm like, I hear you. I'm like, when can I come see it? And he's like, well, I'm actually here right now. If you could get here in the next 30 minutes or so, then I'll show it to you.
And I got to mention, I didn't know any of this was happening. You know, we're driving separate. You know, we both packed our vehicles and we're driving separate. I didn't know any of this was happening.
Yeah. So I go and look at the house.
Did you call her and tell her I'm going to look at a house or no?
I can't remember if I let you know.
I think you told me after.
I think I was just scared to get her hopes up. We weren't.
I was on my
She was
way.
packing.
I don't remember.
Yeah, y'all are doing. You're just living life.
Yeah, you were packing. Okay. It was chaotic.
Yeah.
But anyways, so I go look at this house. We're walking through it, and he's like, "So what do you think? Are you interested?" And I'm like, "Sir, I'm very interested, but I've got to be honest with you. I've got to come clean on something. Like, when you pull a credit report on me, you're gonna have a heart attack. Like you're gonna see 2 years of a nightmare reflecting on my credit report. And I just want you to know that, like, you know, I do construction. We're not going to destroy your house. I can fix anything that my kids can break. You know, I will pay the rent. I've got to keep my family, you know." And I just told him, like, look, I know that on paper, I look like the biggest nightmare tenant you could ever dream of applying for this place. But I promise you, if you'll give my family this chance, we will not let you down.
Side note. I think this is why personal interviews are so important. You know, we've got this culture now where everybody's just a name on a piece of paper with a credit score. And we've gotten so far from like this personal experience of one-on-one being able to go, no, you're a good dude, you know, or no, they look good on paper, they're terrible. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. What a great opportunity for you. You know, God set it up to where it wouldn't just be a paper interview. Like, this is like, you're going to get to look in a guy's eyes. He's going to get to look in yours. Like, this had to happen this way.
Yeah.
You know? Fantastic. All right, so you told him all that, and then what happened?
Yeah, so I tell him all that, and he's like, well, just apply. Like, I like you. Just apply, and we'll look at it. Mm-hmm. So we go home, finish packing. We don't leave Spring City till 1 a.m., and we got to drive to Sevierville. We're driving to Sevierville, and I remember when I was leaving, you know, this whole house thing is in the beginning. I'm like, is that going to work out? I don't know, but I'm leaving this campground in tears because I feel like I've completely failed. Mm. And I just have to keep reminding myself, nope, trust in God, trust in God. Stop making it about you. It's not about you. It's about God and what he can do, not about you and what you can do, what you didn't do, what you failed at. This is about God and his deliverance that I need to focus on. And so we get to the Airbnb at like 3 a.m, fill out the application. The next morning.
He told me, he's like, hey, by the way, on our way here, while you were packing, I stopped by this house and I talked to the landlord, and I was like, Really?
I said to apply. I told him everything.
I was like just pretty like numb at this point. Like, so I was
whatever.
like, oh, really? Okay. I mean, I guess if he wants us to apply, like that sounds incredible and too good to be true. But I'm like, I'm still so hopeless and like kind of numb to even like start rejoicing.
Well, I would think too, like me and my wife have had conversations like this, like when things fall through, or whatever it might be, the next time, like you don't want to emotionally invest.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, we'll see how it goes, but don't tell me about it. I don't want to look at it. I can't invest and then have my dreams crushed again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a real feeling.
Yeah. But the next morning at 10 a.m., he texts me and says, Dallin, we've looked at your application. We definitely see what you meant when you said that it's scary. But we just have a really good feeling about you, and we want to move forward with offering you guys the house.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, another important detail that we
now you're already in the Airbnb.
Yeah, we just got.
Yeah, we just got there. We just got there.
Oh, have you unpacked?
No.
Good.
No. Yeah, we haven't even unpacked. Luckily, we
were
able to leave it in the truck. Yeah. But in this moment, it was we just couldn't believe it, right? And one of the things that helped us financially qualify was just a few weeks before, her grandma had just called us out of the blue and said, hey, we're going to send you $5,000 as a late Christmas present. We meant to give it to you when you were here visiting us, and it didn't happen. We're going to send this to you.
Wow.
And that between that and some money that my grandma helped us with, that gave us just enough money to get into this place.
Yeah, deposit, first month, everything like
That's incredible.
Appeared out of nowhere.
It's one of those things, and we've talked about this before, but like everything had to fall into place, and it's all divine moments. Like they had to forget to give you the $5,000. It's a late Christmas present. At this point, you'd already spent it. It would have been gone. So, it's not like you were saving. So it had to be set back, and then whatever you had. But everything had to fall into place. Like were you not over the top? Like I think I would be running through the Airbnb like, wahoo!
Well, here's the thing. We
were
had
still
driven.
Terrified though.
We drove the next day. We drove to that house. We like the whole family met with them in person again, and his wife was there too. And he's like, listen, on the way here, I had this other guy, calling me off the hook. Like I told him that I'm going to give it to somebody else. He's calling me off the hook. Like
he's offering me more money. He's got perfect credit.
He's like, he really wants this house, and I'm a little bit torn, but
like, what do I do?
Here's the thing. Our landlords are from Bangladesh, and like they might probably not even worship the same God.
Yeah.
But
wow.
God just like moved their hearts.
Softened his heart.
And he's like, just sign it. Like, I'll tell him sorry.
Really?
I was like, nope, I'm your guy. Let's go ahead and sign this lease.
Yeah, block that guy's number.
I go into Grant Cardone closes on this guy at this point. Yeah. I'm like, I'm not losing out now.
I'm not leaving here till this is signed.
Yeah.
You don't understand what I've been through to get to this point. You don't understand the last 2 years of hell that we've been through.
Yeah.
And I was laying in the bed praying about this, leaving the campground at 1:00 in the morning. No, bro, I'm your man.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Right? So you sign it, they're happy, you're happy, everybody's happy. Right?
Yep.
And it's incredible.
Well, and I think, so we still stayed in the Airbnb for a little while because I think like a day later, Dallin was leaving on a trip, doing that door to door. And so I still, like, we couldn't move in.
So it was like, God gave you the house and said, it'll be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It was crazy.
What? Like you went from homeless to 2 places to live, like in a matter of 24 hours.
I was like slowly
nice
making trips with the kids.
Nice places. Yeah, you're like, you had to be getting on that plane to go wherever you were doing, going, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. The moment I stopped doubting, God just shows out and goes,
instantly.
Here's this one, and I'm gonna fly you to somewhere else and put you up for the night.
Yeah.
You're good.
Well, and here's the crazy thing.
In spite of your dog named Bama.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing is, at this point, you've got to understand that according to every standard of the world, every standard of landlords and renting and everything that's happening in our lives, what happened at this point was completely statistically impossible.
Yes.
If you want to talk about works, if you want to talk about being enough,
come on.
I was nowhere on the map
Oh man.
I wasn't financially on the map. My credit score wasn't on the map. I wasn't from here. I had moved from Utah to Florida for 5 minutes, and now I'm here. Yeah. I mean, you got to think about all these factors. Who on earth would risk
and then the person, and I don't know who you are if you're listening, you're out there and you're going, these are the people that got the house. Like, he's calling off the hook. He is perfect for punching all the things and getting all the things done, and conditional love, and works because he's got perfect credit, got more money, got everything. And God goes, see, I'm telling you, it's never been about that.
Mm-hmm.
What?
It was a huge moment.
Unbelievable.
And that was kind of what sealed the whole lesson about grace for me. Well, there was one experience after that really sealed it, but that was a huge thing. I was like, God literally stepped in and saved us in this temporal sense without us being anywhere near worthy. If anything, my works only got us deeper into this hole.
Ooh.
Even though I was trying to fight my way out, I was digging a deeper hole.
Mm-hmm.
And God still stepped in and saved us.
As soon as you surrendered.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're in the present day, right? Did we make it? We made it here? What else we got?
Okay, so a couple weeks after that, part of what his friend had called him about with this work opportunity is he had known that we were living in Tennessee, and with this company that he called him about, he's like, this company has leads out in Greenville, and of course he says Greenville, but he said we have leads in Greenville, and I'm gonna. Like, if you're interested, they're all yours. And so he was doing some trips, but then when he was here, he could also work out in Greenville. And so he had been working out there, and I think this is still when we were in between in the Airbnb, but he met these people out at this house, knocked on the door, and they just start talking about Jesus. And you could tell a little bit more of the story, I guess, but they just, and eventually they ended up inviting us over for dinner. And
this is an incredible part of the story.
They had these weekly dinners, where they'd have all their friends over and they would eat together, and they would
like good Christian. It wasn't a party.
They would discuss the Bible.
They'd bring a guitar and sing worship songs.
Wow.
Just a really cool get together that they invited us to. They're like, hey, we're going to be hosting, this at our house this coming Friday. We would love if your family could come. Bring your family. And so we go to this dinner, and, we get talking to them and just kind of telling them our story, where we're at. I mean, we just barely locked down the house. But I'm still just dealing with my panic attacks. I'm still dealing with all of the other stuff.
Still got to make money.
Still got to make money. And I'm telling them, I'm like, I feel like there's just this weight that's just weighing me down, making it impossible for me to break through. Like, there's something, whether it's energetically or it's in my own belief system, there's something holding me back. And I don't understand what's keeping me from turning everything around, from being able to be successful again, to get my peace back, And they prayed over us. They prayed for us, and they taught us a valuable lesson, not only about prayer and how to pray with power, because again, at this point, we're conditioned as in the Mormon Church to pray in a very different way. We can get into that in the next episode as well.
I do want to talk about how you.
But it's not very powerful. Like, and I'm not saying this for every Mormon. I'm sure there's several individually who have a good relationship with prayer, but I think as a whole it's just very mundane, and it's like you're begging for forgiveness to receive God's blessings.
But and it's laid out there probably for you too.
A little bit. It's like, dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day, thank you for this one true church, basically. Oh, wow. We pray for the prophet, and just like asking for forgiveness to be made worthy, of course. And so we had to completely relearn how to pray.
Just like from
powerful
a genuine
prayer,
stance.
Calling on Jesus. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and in this process, they helped us to realize that a big part of the whole piece of the puzzle that we were missing was forgiveness. I didn't realize that everything that I was holding on to was holding me back. And I had been hurt by a lot of people. I had been wronged by a lot of people. I had a lot that I was holding on to. I mean, my whole life was wrecked. And
so many people who did really
stabbed me in the back in
to
really
him.
horrible ways. And it was so hard to even begin to comprehend how I could forgive them. But in that moment, that night, as I was praying with them, we forgave them. And one of the things that they encouraged us to specifically, mention is like, we forgive them for doing what they know not of. We forgive them for.
Words of Jesus on a cross.
Yeah. And
he's being crucified.
It was powerful
by the very people that he created, and he says, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And you're about to forgive people that are supposed to love you, care for you, walk life with you, even support you. Like if you make a decision that's not what they would make, and yet they're hammering you. And like what you said, we've never really got into this. Like I know a little bit of what was done, but not the deep part of that. I don't think we had to put it out here unless you just want to, but I don't think so.
We're trying not to.
Yeah, I think, we'll talk off air on that, but to forgive people like that. I've been in a place where I've been so hurt by people that I would get up every day and in the shower, like I'm praying, get them, Jesus, get them. You know what I mean? And you wouldn't believe, maybe you guys would, people maybe listen, may not, but every day you're anticipating their downfall. Like God's going to step in and just crush them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, give them a taste of their medicine.
Yeah, get them, because the Bible says leave room for vengeance. So in my mind, when I think of vengeance, I'm thinking, all right, here he comes out of heaven, and he's just going to lay waste to him. But that's not, the moment you kind of alleviate that and say, God, I forgive these people. They know not what they've done to me. They know not the pain they've caused. They know not the terror I've been through. They know not X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. And you let them go, you release it to him.
Well, tell him what happened to that weight on your shoulders.
Well, it was in that moment that it dawned on me that I realized it wasn't about what they needed to change. They might not, they may have already changed. Yep. I haven't talked to them. They may have already changed. They may not ever change. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter, because if I'm going to let what they're doing affect me and have control over my peace, then I'm not going to find peace regardless of whether they have changed or they never will.
Facts.
And it was in that moment that I realized I had to let go of that. I was holding on to this what I thought was a curse, but really what it was the burden of unforgiveness, the burden of holding a grudge, the burden of hoping that God would get him back. And once I let go of that, when I tell you that I walked out of that house with all of the weight off of my shoulders, I literally walked out of that house anxiety free. I still had my moments, but I was on an upward trajectory that I didn't think was possible.
As we kind of wrap this down, because we're going to sit down again and talk through some things, and some of that may come out too, just as we talk about nuances. But I don't think people who are holding on to unforgiveness understand just the change that happens, because I've lived that, like where I wanted something to happen, and you sort of obsess, like these people have faces, names, and you're like, you've got a whole different list. Instead of trying to get into heaven, it's like who you want Jesus to take out, and they live with you. Right? Every day they live with you. They live in your thoughts. They live in you can have a trigger, you think about it, the pain, whatever. When you forgive somebody genuinely, I never think about them. Like never. Mm-hmm. Like what you just said. I haven't talked to them. I haven't seen them. Like it's over. Now, what they do with that, I don't know. But I can tell you there's times where my children or my wife may mention something. I'll be like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. But just years ago, I was like, oh, if I could get my hands on that person. And here's the other thing is like, when God moves you to a place of forgiveness, like at this point in my life, I'm not holding grudge. There's nobody I really am mad at. Like I can't think of anybody. I'm sure there's somebody that's probably ticked me off, but I'm not really mad at. But here's what's happened to me. And I'm assuming this will happen to you. Maybe it already has. I feel bad for people sometimes. Like I see them get what, like probably, I would have prayed for them to get. Now when I see them get it, I'm like, dude, man, I hate that. I genuinely hate that for them.
You hate to see them suffer.
I do, because I've suffered. Yeah. And you've suffered. So you've had a taste of that, and now you see it, and you're like, man, gosh, I hate it for them. Like, I'm not going to step in and take it from them, but it hurts me for them, And so you walk out of there, it's lighter. Mm-hmm. How are y'all today?
Well, one thing that I want to mention,
go ahead,
and
yeah.
I feel like I bring up the chosen in every segment of this.
I don't think this would be an appropriate podcast without you doing that.
Well, but this is very valuable.
And Chosen, if you're listening, get my man Dallin on there. He can play anything. He can play a shopkeeper. He can play like the 14th disciple that we just discovered. I mean, anything. A new colt, donkey. He'll do it. He loves Chosen. Get my man on the show.
Yeah, but there's this in season 4. There's this moment where Matthew was a tax collector, and the way that the chosen kind of sets up their whole relationship is, in the beginning of the chosen, Matthew is coming after Peter for all of his debts, and everything's mounting. He's about to lose everything. He's about to go to jail. He's about to lose everything, right? He's desperate, and he goes out and he fishes all night. Nothing happens. And then Jesus shows up. We know the story. Jesus shows up, blesses them with a multitude of fishes. I love that they have that backstory. Throw it out on the other side, bro. Yeah, it makes it so sentimental and relatable. Well, Matthew is seeking forgiveness from Peter in season 4. And Matthew apologizes. He asks for forgiveness, and Peter blows him off. And later that night, Peter goes and seeks out Jesus, and he comes to him and says, I don't know how to forgive him. Like, after everything he did, all of the horrible things he put me through, all of the pain, all of the misery, all of the fear, like, I wouldn't have been in trouble in the first place if he wouldn't have ratted me out, to the Romans. And he's just feeling so much anger and just, how could I ever forgive him? And he's listing off all the things that Matthew's done to him. And Jesus looks at him and smiles and says, and then what happened?
Yeah. And then what happened?
Then what happened?
Yeah.
And that I think is such a valuable lesson, because Jesus is like, yeah, tell me about how wronged you were.
Yeah.
And then what did I do?
Yeah. Talk to me about betrayal. Go for it. Yeah.
And then what happened?
Yeah.
And I've found that in my life. And then what happened? Focusing on the what happened. It doesn't matter who wronged you. It doesn't matter if you deserved it or if you didn't. What matters is Jesus.
Yeah.
And what he has done or will do if you have the faith to deliver you from it. And it is our obligation to forgive, because Jesus rights all wrongs.
And he forgives us. And, that's a beautiful thing, is like Jesus can relate to us. Like, when I go throw up on his feet and I'm like, they did this. And he's like, and then what happened? And I'm like, well, I did this. You know what I mean? He was like, you need just as much forgiveness as they do. And a lot of times we're on the other end of that, and we're the wronged person. We don't feel like the person that wronged us deserves forgiveness, right? And it's not until I become the wronger that I can forgive the wrongee. I don't know if that's even English language. I don't know if y'all talk like that out in Utah, but we do here, and all my listeners know what I'm talking about. Just like when you say Greenville and we say Greenville, it's got a U in it, like Marvel. But it's true. It's just true that, like, forgiveness is best experienced not only in self, but when we give it to others.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But fast forwarding to today, it's been a fight. It's been a fight out of the hole, Talk about works. It doesn't mean that Jesus just took care of it and I just, walked on the treadmill.
You're just skating by now.
Yeah, it was far from skating by. I still had to fight my way out. But the difference is that I knew that Jesus was magnifying my efforts and that he was not going to let me fail. We've had so many moments where all at once we're like I'm getting delayed paychecks because installs didn't happen, that I sold the internet for. And it's like, oh my gosh, we have all these bills due. We've got rent due in a week. What are we going to do? Where I'm not going to make enough money. And every time I get scared and I start to doubt, I'm reminded of James, James chapter 1, and I'm able to go back into, no, God will provide. And it's crazy, the things. A random check in the mail from her car that we refinanced, that we had overpaid a balance, and boom, $900. And all these little miracles keep happening. And it's like God is proving over and over again that if we will just have faith, the money's not a problem. He can make it fall out of crazy places.
Yeah, the Bible says he owns the cattle on 1,000 hills.
Yeah.
Like, what we're asking him for is like nothing. It's like when my son asked me for like $1. You know, he's like, hey, Dad, can I get $1? I'm like, sure, you know. Wow, you know?
Yeah.
And like, it's no big deal for me. Like, I don't even think about it. And like, we are literally the kids at his feet going, God, I need you to come through.
Childlike faith.
Yes. And I've said this over and over, is it's not the thing that he gives us that he wants to show off about. He wants your obedience, you know, and what he's got out of you guys at this point is full obedience and faith in him.
Yeah, and we've talked about this over the last couple of weeks, but like we feel like this chapter has finally come to a close.
Good.
And we're starting a new one.
And everything that we needed and were looking for, like in Utah, everybody's your community. If you're a member of the church, everyone accepts you, you know, all this stuff. And I can't do this interview without mentioning like the community that God's blessed us with. Like literally the same weekend, we got blessed with the miracle of the house. We came to church like the next day, and this girl, like we just sitting on the right side like we usually do. We're sitting behind this other couple, and after the service, all of a sudden she just turns around, never seen her in my life. She goes, "Hey, would you like to join a women's hiking group where we go on hikes and talk about Jesus?" And I'm like, okay.
I didn't even know that was a thing here.
Friend?
Oh, awesome.
Well, the thing is, some other lady organized it and then got pregnant, was too sick to even go. It's just me and this girl. And now we're best friends. And like, she is like one of the best friends I've ever had. And God's just like, here's a house, here's a friend, here's a community, here's everything you need.
Here's a hike.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh man, you know, it is so awesome to watch God just open things up and give you exactly what you need. And that's the first time I've seen you moved emotionally.
I know, I'm not a crier.
I know you're not, but what happens is, like for you, Karli, you've been the rock and all that stuff, but just when you see God take care of you, and he has the medicine that you need, you know? You guys, I want to wrap this up because we're coming back, you know? And we've been talking a long time, and thank you for listening to this story. Thank you for sharing your story, you know, the ups and downs. And I would like to say, yes, okay, you're pulling a chapter and you're closing it, going, all right, it's closed. I think the next chapter starts, and then what happened? Because this thing's about to take off. Like, you know, this is the part where we stop and go, I don't even know how to report back in on what's going to happen next. But I'm telling you, this story is about to just explode in magnificent ways.
Just getting started.
Yes, God didn't bring you this far to go, okay, that's it. That's all I got to show you for the next 50 years. You know what I mean? Like, he has been working and chiseling, and it's going to be incredible to see how many people's lives you impact and how many people's life impact you, how your kids develop. This is awesome. And I'm so thankful to be able to call you guys family, you know, and brothers and sisters in what God's doing. And I cannot wait to hear the rest of it, or watch, to be along, journey with you on the next part of this story. If the wheels fall off, you will not need an attorney to get out of this relationship. Okay, you can just say, I'm out. You know. But I tell you what, we're not perfect around here. But what we're going to do is we're going to majorly focus on grace and mercy and love of Jesus Christ, and the unconditional love that He shows. Because as much as we move forward, we're going to fall down, and He's going to pick us back up. And I'm so thankful that you're all here. Now, having said that, y'all are coming back, and we're going to get into some of that fun discussion that I don't know nothing about. Y'all down for that?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you for watching Tales from the Other Side of Stories of Grace. Dallin and Karli, two of my favorite people. They will be back in a few weeks. Love you. Bye.